Hi, everyone. I'm Deb Flashenberg. Welcome to Yoga, Birth, Babies, a podcast produced by Prenatal Yoga Center. We will be diving into everything prenatal yoga, birth, and baby related, hoping to inspire, educate, and empower you through your journey into motherhood. Thank you for listening. Hi, I'm Deb Flashenberg. I'm your host of Yoga Birth Babies, and today we're going to talk about a topic that's not too often discussed: colicky babies. Now, I've heard about colicky babies for decades because my older brother was colicky, and my mom talked about it for a long time. In fact, I don't think she's ever really gotten over it. And I've had some friends that have had colicky babies, and it's really taken a toll on them. So I thought, let's talk about this. Let's understand a little bit about what colic is and having a plan and some tips for if your baby's colicky, how to get through this phase. So to have this conversation, I have Jackie DelVecchio. She is a licensed mental health counselor in Massachusetts. She graduated with a master's degree in mental health counseling and went on to become certified in perinatal mental health. Jackie also received a certification in laughter therapy to incorporate in the much needed skill into her work. And she currently works as a private practice. And on a personal note, she is married and the mother of two. And her first child was colicky, so she's got a lot of information and some really solid tips. So if you're in the middle of this phase, Jackie's going to throw you a lifeline and give you some support and help to get to the other side. And if you are pregnant, having a plan in case your baby is colicky can help smooth yourself through this transitional time. Because remember, colic is transitional. That baby is not going to be colicky forever. Before we get to that conversation, I want to give a shout out to Kristen, who's actually been part of our community for a while. She lives in Alaska, and wow, talk about dedication. She had been taking classes pretty much every day for several months, and I just got her email, and I just pulled out a snippet of what she wrote to me. She said, "The hip circles felt amazing, and while things didn't go as planned, it was amazing. Pushed for maybe 10 minutes, standing and swaying in seaweed asana. Everyone is happy and healthy. I can't tell you how grateful I am to have found your classes in this pandemic. Know that you were part of this birth miles away as I channeled your voice. Thank you." Well, thank you, Kristen. And I have to say, I have seen many births, but I have never seen a baby be pushed out in seaweed asana. So that's actually one of our made-up Prenatal Yoga Center poses. So if you don't know it and want to know it, jump into class. So thank you, Kristen, for sharing that. And I am deeply honored to have been part of your birth in some way, and that our time together, even though it was virtual, even though we were only Zoom to face once, I knew your commitment to the classes, and I'm so honored to have played a small role. So thank you for letting me know that. What else? So as you know, we have classes and our workshops online. Everything's online. So check that out. You can check it out on our website, prenatalyogacenter.com. You can also sign up for our newsletter and continue to get the information. Each newsletter has a little snippet of great information, just a little tip you can take away with you. And then the last thing I want to mention is if you are enjoying this podcast and you want to leave a rating and review, I would greatly appreciate it. It would help people find the podcast and will help our community continue to thrive. Okay, I think that's enough. We're going to take a super quick break, and when we come back, please enjoy my conversation with Jackie. Hi, Jackie. How are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing really well. I am really excited to talk to you. I know not every baby is colicky, but those that are, it is tough. It is a tough road. So I'm really excited to talk to you about coping with a colicky baby. And I know you went through this. So I guess to jump in, why don't you tell me a little bit about yourself and also what led you to specializing in perinatal mental health?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I am a licensed mental health counselor, and that has just kind of always been my passion. And I never really thought of going the perinatal route before until I then had a child who had colic. So it was after that experience that I realized parenthood was way harder than I expected, especially since there are unexpected things that can then happen with your children. And it's not just the regular tough stuff of not sleeping well and your life changing, right? So after that experience, I was like, wow, people need help with parenthood. I finally understood it because that was our first child, and it was just that eye-opening experience that people need a lot more support in parenthood.
Yeah, and especially with a colicky baby, that really changes the whole ball game. So I guess here we are talking about colicky baby, but some people might be listening and they don't even know what that is. So let's start with definitions. What is colic? What's it mean to have a colicky baby?
At first, we had no clue either. We kind of thought it was this, honestly, just kind of this bull thing. Like we were like, what, this isn't anything. Like, what does this mean? It's a baby who cries for no reason, like it just didn't make sense to us. But basically, how it's defined is that it's long, frequent periods of inconsolable crying in an otherwise healthy infant. And it appears that they're in pain. There's a lot of like physical symptoms that come with it, a lot of discomfort, possibly gas. There really isn't too much information that clearly defines like what causes it or, why that started, but it's long periods of inconsolable crying that typically peaks at 6 weeks. And then usually at 3 or 4 months kind of declines or dies down at that point.
So for those that are in the middle of this, first of all, I'm so deeply sorry, but yet know that there is light at the end of the tunnel. So maybe that's a bit of solace.
It does. It is temporary. It feels like forever when it's happening, but that's the mystery of colic is how could something so intense happen to parents and this poor child for so long and then just go away? Because in our case, we did go through some formula changes and that sort of thing. But for some people, they don't do that. But it still goes away. So it's really such a mystery and why there's not so much information out there and why it's so hard for parents to grasp the concept of it. And
there's no medical understanding of it.
A little bit, like they're really, when the research that we did, because we did a lot after, because we really wanted to understand it, was the risk factors. There really wasn't anything concrete. Aside from I saw one that was about, mothers who are smoking, before and after possibly might be a risk factor. But as far as causes, there's just kind of different things thrown out there, possibly like an underdeveloped digestive tract or like food allergies or intolerances, maybe overfeeding that causes a little bit more gas, maybe stress in parents, but there's really nothing very concrete. It's kind of just like, well, yeah, no, this is what it is, but it will go away and your baby's healthy.
So how did you figure out that your baby had colic?
So, well, it's a funny story now, but it wasn't funny then. Honestly, the second day in the hospital, the nurses were wheeling her in after she was in the nursery. So they came back every few hours for me to feed or for her to feed. And I was half asleep and I heard the nurse say, wow, she's a really colicky baby. And I didn't know what that meant. Because it was my first child and I really had no clue. So I didn't think anything of it, and that's after we went home when she started crying a lot more often. And it was very difficult after feedings and just when the crying just was nonstop, that's when it clicked to me and we met with the pediatrician and it was basically diagnosed at that second appointment, but, at the appointment where we reached out and said, hey, something might be a little bit off. I don't know what's going on. And I think that was day 9 of her life. So that's how we found out.
So I can imagine the anxiety as a brand new parent. You come home, you're thinking, all right, we took our courses. We know, how to swaddle all that. And then this baby just won't stop crying. I can imagine the anxiety of like, did we do something wrong? Is there something wrong with the baby? What was going through your minds at that point? What kind of toll did it take on on everything, I guess, at that time.
Yes, those are definitely thoughts that were going through our head. Do we not know what we're doing, or am I doing something wrong with trying to breastfeed, or is she unhealthy? What is happening? And I know that they always have 24-hour, on call that you could call a nurse at any point, but it's still, when you're home, you don't want to call for every single thing. And you just kind of assume, well, this must be normal. This must be, a new baby just learning the way of the world. And then they're going to cry, and they're going to cry a lot. And then when we started having friends over who had recently just had kids too, it kind of clicked, like, maybe this is a little bit more than other babies cry. And when we started really getting stressed out and started looking things up, that's when we decided to make that appointment. But it was very stressful. We definitely expected crying, and we expected sleepless nights, but this was beyond our expectations. And it was very, I don't even know the word for it. It was just all a blur. And it still sometimes is when I think back to that time.
Because it's basically like you have a child who's healthy but has higher needs. I had a couple students in postnatal. Again, it's all in Zoom, but I was looking at their faces, and they had shared that their babies don't stop crying unless they're being bounced or held, and just the pure exhaustion that I saw in their eyes and on their face. It's a different, almost relentless exhaustion than I had seen, and I had seen it throughout the years. What was that doing to your mind and body during that time, if you remember?
Oh yeah. Yeah. What it did to my body was what it led, like I said, led to my interest in helping others, because it was brutal sometimes. It was just absolutely brutal. It was, you hear, okay, when the baby sleeps, then you rest. This is your time to do these things. And well, what happens when your baby doesn't nap, which she was really never a napper, because she just couldn't get comfortable, and she could not settle herself down from the crying and the gas and everything, that if she napped, it was in my arms. So to have something constant all day, where even if she wasn't crying, she needed me. It was a very trapped feeling. Like, when do I get to do my stuff? When can I have my life, or at least a little break here and there, And so of course we had to switch off and support each other and take breaks, but still having something completely rely on you all day is very difficult.
Yeah, I had a really good friend that called me up, and it was her first child, and she's like, we made a mistake.
Yep.
And that was it. It was just the words, we made a mistake. And then she explained it, and I'm like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. He's colicky. And it was just, the only words I can come up were just relentless. That's all I can think about, the way it just took down the joy, she said, that she had expected parenthood to be. And again, things changed, and she loves her child. This was like 11 years ago, but I just remember feeling for her, and she truly believed. She's like, this was a mistake. I should not have done that. And she got past it. So what did you find actually helped calm your baby?
So it was a lot of trial and error. When we started researching things, most of it, when you hear inconsolable, it's like, oh my God, then what am I going to do if there's literally nothing to console my baby? But there are a few really weird random things that for some reason colicky babies really respond well to. And one of them is the yoga ball, is constant bouncing up and down on a yoga ball. I don't know why it works. I don't know if it's the motion. I really don't know why, but it is something that we found to be the most helpful. And other parents that I know who have experienced it also relied heavily on the yoga ball. So that was probably the biggest one, which we did most of the day. And even, any visitors who came over wanted to hold her also bounced on that ball. Like it went a long way. And even for her naps, the same thing. In order to get her to sleep or to calm down, we would just bounce on the yoga ball. So that was our saving grace for sure. And the sound of the vacuum is another one. They do sell vacuum cleaner like CDs where you can kind of have that sound going constantly without actually using the vacuum. So we did get that, but that one was a little bit more hit or miss. But the yoga ball, absolutely. And then just a funny one. I don't know why this works, or at least for our daughter, it did, was for some reason the Justin Timberlake hit, Can't Stop the Feeling.
Oh my God, really?
I'm telling you, it was unbelievable. Like every time we put it on, she was quiet. As soon as it ended, right back to it. It was something about that song. So we played it
on repeat
a lot. And she still likes it to this day.
My brother was colicky and I heard about it forever. I still feel like I hear about it. My mom said that he would sleep in the car, cause we were not living in the city. So we're in the suburb. And she said she drove all around Massachusetts just to get him quiet for hours and miles and just drove.
Yep.
So I'm going to throw that out there. What about, I've heard a lot of, again, we don't know if colic is necessarily gas or digestive stuff. What about like massaging the stomach and tummy area? Does that help a lot of babies that have colic?
They say it does. We didn't find any success with that, but I also don't know because it was hard to be patient because when your baby is screaming and trying to like arch their back and they're so red in the face, you feel like they're going to pass out because they're screaming so loud. It's hard to like slowly and calmly massage while that's happening. You just want to like do something. You want to stop it. You want to, get right on that ball and start bouncing. So at least that they can calm down. So I don't know if it's that we just didn't give it enough of a chance because of that like feeling of I need to pick up my baby and do something. Mm-hmm. But we did not typically find that to be one of our go-tos.
I can just imagine the frustration of wanting to do everything you can for your baby, but then there's the mental and physical fatigue. How did you keep your patience? How did you not, or maybe you didn't, maybe you're like, there's moments that you're like, yeah! Like what do you say to the person that is, now that you're on the other side, that is just losing it? Like, what are some tools that they can use when they are really falling apart?
Oh yeah. I wish I could say that I had kept my patience a lot of the times, but I didn't because you're not sleeping very well. Your whole life has changed and you have a baby who has a lot of needs and you also feel bad putting somebody else in charge of those needs, right? Like I would even feel bad, having my mom watch her because it's like, oh my God, you're going to be going straight for hours, and that takes a toll on other people too. So even with that guilt and feeling bad, taking breaks is essential. Whether you're swapping off, whether a friend comes over just for a half hour, just so you can, even if you're still listening to the baby cry, just to be able to separate yourself from the room, go take a shower, something, just breaking it up with little breaks is really important. I mean, one thing for me was I knew that I wanted to get back to work. I knew I needed that work-life balance, which was really helpful for me to be able to get out of the house and then be with her when I wasn't working. So having these other roles and identities is also very important. Because we lose that when we become parents anyways, temporarily. And because we have to, right? We have to take care of this child who really needs us and relies on us. So we get lost and lose our identity sometimes. And so making sure we're still having that separate life here and there, getting out with a friend, going for a walk, doing some separate things is, I think, really, really important too. But just as far as like normalizing that it's okay to not have much patience around that. That is a very distressing sound and you constantly feel helpless because inconsolable is inconsolable. There's not much you can do. And it's just this bizarre, just like disorder that happens that Like that is part of the deal, that no matter how good of a parent you are, it still might not stop your baby from crying. And it's not about your worth as a parent. It's about what colic is.
Did you ever feel judged by others when you were out? I don't know if you went out, but if you did go out and your baby was just crying, what was that like?
Yeah, we didn't go out very often
Because she was crying.
Calm down. Exactly. So, but the judgment, I think it was more me judging myself than I was thinking other people were judging me. It was more of like, ooh, am I doing what I'm supposed to be doing? Do they think that I'm a good mom? Or even people who are, oh, have you tried this? That type of advice, it can be definitely helpful sometimes, but in that moment, when I'm thinking I can't stop my baby from crying, I'm thinking, oh my God, have I not tried everything? Or, hey, I am trying all this. You don't know what this is like. So the emotions were all over the place.
Oh, I can't imagine. All right, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, let's talk a little bit about what it was like, the reality of your new parenthood compared to what perhaps you had imagined parenthood be like, and what it was like compared to seeing some of your new mom friends, what they were experiencing. We'll be right back. Okay, we are back. So kind of loaded question. So all parents, I think, probably have this idea of when they have their baby in this new family, what parenthood's going to be like. And then you have a colicky baby and you're like, this is not like that. And then it's probably even more different than, like you said, your friends came over and you're like, oh, our baby's very different. What was that whole situation like?
Well, it was kind of a bummer. It was kind of a bummer because the whole process, trying to get pregnant and wanting that family and seeing your friends getting pregnant and having their families, like it's a stressful thing, right? And then you want that and you get excited for that. And then you have that and it's not what you imagined. And it's such a bummer in that moment, right? And it does, like you were saying with your friend, it goes quickly to, is this really what we wanted? Like, this is what we were so stressed out about trying to get pregnant for. And like, this is it. And like, how do people become parents? So it definitely was shattered. Those expectations were shattered. So we had a lot of different, I think I can speak for my husband because we've talked about this plenty, but there were a lot of emotions, and we were not prepared for that. And so seeing other friends in my head, I'm like, how are they so natural at this? How do they know what to do? How do they, like, am I missing something? Like, am I, this secret club that I just joined? Like, did I miss all the meetings? Like, I don't know how they're doing this and keeping their child calm and all of these things. So it was a lot of jealousy. It was a lot of shame and even some anger. It was tough having all of these emotions while also trying to help your baby.
Yeah.
This was all going on at the same time. So I was pulled in so many different directions. And not to say I wasn't happy for my friends, of course I was, but I was definitely jealous. Yeah. I was jealous of like, why did our baby have to have colic? And it was just a whirlwind of emotions.
And that brings something up. So I mentioned that my brother was colicky, and it's something I heard for years, but I really feel like it affected my mom's relationship with him. I feel like she had resentment towards him because I think she was ill-equipped to handle the demands of a colicky baby, especially she was a lot younger, way back then. She was in, I had my kids in my late 30s. She's had hers in her mid to late 20s. I think she was ill-equipped to handle that. So what would you say to that new parent? Because, you do counsel people if they come in and they're resentful of their child because, like you said, the demands, it's just so much harder than what other people, then I'm going to put in quotes like normal, right, or the typical. We'll use the word typical.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It wasn't until we learned more about what colic was that I was then able to kind of separate that from my relationship with her. For example, in the beginning, anytime people asked, "Oh, how's the baby?" "Oh, well, she's terrible." She cries all the time. And it was so personal to her. But then when we really started to understand what colic was, what it's doing to her body, what we don't, what it could possibly be going on in there that's causing this discomfort, then I was able to kind of say hey, this is not her fault. This is bad for both of us. This is really, unfortunate. But so that really helped with kind of those resentment type thinking is to really separate what your baby or what your baby is doing from your worth as a parent. And so being able to kind of have these affirmations and be able to separate, even if your baby does, that does not mean you're a bad parent, and even if you miss your old life and you want to run away, that still doesn't mean you're a bad parent. And so being able to kind of normalize a lot of that and understand how much your life changes either way, to be able to kind of process that and have a space to talk about that is really huge.
Yeah. And I can imagine that just also maybe your pediatrician explaining, it's your baby's not doing this on purpose. Cause I can imagine there is resentment. How did your pediatrician explain it? What's going on in her body that helped, that kind of clicked to be okay, she's just as uncomfortable as we are, probably more.
Oh, goodness gracious. So she really didn't.
Okay.
When we first got on day 9, when we got that, kind of, hey, this sounds like colic. This is colic. We did all of our own research. We were not given really any information, what to expect, what we should be doing. There really wasn't any guidance around that. So my husband is such a Googler. And he got all of this information, all of this research, and we just learned everything we possibly could. And that continued on when we went to the specialist for the, gastrointestinal doctors. And this was all because we were pushing for these changes and stuff. So there really wasn't much information out there. So that was something that we had to advocate and really do for ourselves, unfortunately.
So do some doctors have, do some doctors have information on this and some don't? Or is this just the doctor's by 6 weeks, it will subside, by 3 months, it should be gone? How can doctors be helpful? Is this a question that when someone's interviewing a pediatrician, they can say if I have a colicky baby, how are you going to help me?
Hey, that would be a great question, and how often should I call? How much is too much crying? How much, that, I think those actually would be really helpful because typically anything that we've ever gotten from a doctor, if one of our children were diagnosed with something, it's just a little informational sheet. Mm-hmm. But even then, think of anything we've learned in school, that does not prepare you for the actual experience, and so it's more of kind of this in-depth discussion of kind of what to expect when it really is colic versus, just regular baby gas and that sort of thing. It is something that takes a very big emotional toll on parents and can absolutely increase odds of postpartum depression for mom and dad.
Oh, yeah, of course. So if someone is starting to head down that path of postpartum depression, how would you support them? What should they seek?
Well, obviously if they're coming to me, that's a great sign because they're in therapy, right? Which is great. And I've seen a lot more moms reach out even proactively of, hey, I'm pregnant. I really want to get on this so that, I have a history of X, Y, and Z. And so I've seen that a lot lately, which I'm so glad is happening more. But I think what I have found too is mom groups, or some sort of parent group. Mm-hmm. has been very helpful for my clients and for friends I know, just to have that support, just to have that group support. There's so much value in spending time with people who are going through similar things, even if it's not, another colicky baby, but just oh man, this is tough and I'm tired and, these are my thoughts and what's normal, what's not. And so those mom groups or support groups have been very, very helpful for people.
Yeah, I'm actually still friends with some of the people I met at my first child support group almost 10 years ago, about 9 years ago.
Wow.
And we're still pals. And it was so helpful just to get a touchstone of like, okay, we're kind of in the ballpark of this is happening and this is happening. Mm-hmm. And just someone else to understand those first few months of just like living in the mud of like, what is happening, especially with your first child? Is this normal? You're not sleeping either. I'm not sleeping. It felt really, not supportive. It's not even just the word, just like validating that.
Yes.
Yeah, I really enjoyed that. So you had one colicky baby. I told you about my friend that called me up that this is a mistake. So she decided to have a second, which I have to tell you, I was shocked because, her son eventually got over it. He really did. And he's an awesome kid. But when she said they were doing another, I'm like, really? Do you want me to remind you of what you said? But so she really committed. Like she was trying to do, like she took probiotics. She was doing acupuncture. Like she was just thinking, I cannot have another colicky baby because it would put me over the edge. So she started really going kind of this routine. She was being super mindful of what she was eating, but there was such anxiety around and fear, like rightfully so, because it was so hard the first time. So how would you talk about the anxiety about possibly experiencing a subsequent child like that might have colic? Like how would men mentally prepare for that?
Yeah. Well, yeah, we were so anxious. I can totally relate to your friend. It took me a long time to agree to have a second one. I did not know if I could go through that again. If our second was also colicky, it took a toll on me. So, I don't know, like sometimes the mental preparation can be a little bit tougher where it's more the plan, like, okay, let's just assume your second one is colicky, what happened the first time? What were you doing or not doing? What can we add? How many supports? Like really coming up with a plan, because it's not fair to say, okay, well, the odds are pretty low of you having another one. Because I know plenty of parents who had multiple colicky children, and so you don't want to give that false hope, right? That it's not going to happen because you already had one. So it's really about that plan and what you are going to do for self-care this time around, and what was not so helpful, what was very difficult the first time. And so it's a lot of planning.
Will you share some of that? What you found helped, what didn't help? What was your plan mentally, physically? Yeah. Like if baby number 2 came out and you're like, oh my God, here we are again.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So personally, my plan was definitely as soon as I was able to, would have a regular exercise routine, because that was something I did not do. I was after my first, I was just exhausted, and it would have been beneficial if I did it, even though I was tired, but I didn't do it. I just did not do it. So exercise was definitely a big one. Another one was allowing help, asking for help. If this is the case, as soon as we can, we're going to get either somebody in the family to kind of help out, or we'll do daycare a little bit earlier. Because with our first, I literally would not send her to daycare because I felt too bad. So I just kept her home way longer than we had hoped, because I did not want daycare to have to deal with that. So
now you're like, take him.
I was like, nope, yep, that's literally what you're trained to do. Like I'm not, so that was one is doing that earlier. Another one is, if I was truly worried, like I was absolutely going to explore medication. I did not the first time around, and looking back on
For
it,
you or the
I
baby?
probably should have. Yeah, I probably should have. So
Medication for
for me.
you? For
No,
you?
no, for
Okay.
me. Yeah. For me.
Okay.
She was on other medication to help her, but with the reflex and that sort of thing. But like I think being a therapist, I was like, no, I have to get through this. I have to do this, on my own. And I learned a lot through therapy that's just not the best option. So, this time around, I was like, I'm going to do whatever it takes to work on my health because there's no other option for me, and so it was, some things we're planning that I would definitely do, and others were kind of, okay, if it's really not going well, here, that here's that backup plan. So I did stay in therapy as well, to help prepare and plan for our second child.
That must have felt good to know that you had a plan in place and just brought a little bit of confidence, I'm guessing.
Yes. Yes, it definitely, I mean, I still did not want a second colicky child, but I was like, okay, this time I feel a lot more, it's going to be different because I'm a lot more prepared for this. And we have all these things in place, worst case scenario.
Was she colicky?
Our second was not. No, he was not. Nope.
That's really good. I'm very happy to hear about that.
I know, but I truly, my heart, oh my God, goes out to all the people, who had to deal with anything, with children, but, to have a second one, it's very challenging. But even I think for the first 6 or 8 weeks, we were still on edge every day, just looking out for any signs of colic coming. We were like, oh, are we in the clear yet? Nope. It's still not the peak time. We got to wait. It was painful.
When is the peak time that one would notice if a baby was heading down that path?
They say like the peak is at 6 weeks, so probably would start to notice that anytime after 2 weeks, which, like I said, we had somehow got that on day 2, but, there are different severities, I think, in different cases, where some might start right away and others won't start until after a month.
Gosh, you've given such amazing information. Is there anything I haven't asked about either your experience handling a colicky baby, your experience as a therapist when you have clients that have a colicky baby, or anything in that whole realm that you want to share?
Oh man. There's just so much. There's so much, and it's such a loaded conversation because there's a lot of different routes to go. How do you support the baby? How do you support yourself? How do you support the relationship you're in? Because that takes a toll on it, so I'm biased, of course, but therapy is very helpful for that, even if it's just for kind of learning different skills of how to communicate, how to ask for what you need. So it's like that's definitely a really, really good one to explore, even for parents not going through colic. I think you can learn some very crucial skills to be able to get through the regular stressors that come with parenthood, anyways. But I think it's really a lot of planning, a lot of prioritizing your health and your mental health.
You brought up a really good point about the partner. I can imagine one's already tired postpartum, and then your nerves are probably a little on edge from a crying baby. Even if it's your own, like that sound is very strident. I mean, it can be really hard. And so you're not at your best, to say the least. I can imagine partners being kind of snappy. Like, I know when I'm tired, my husband always is like, you get a little mean. So how did you guys stay on the same team?
We weren't always on the same team, but like you said, like it just caused so much stress that we're snapping at each other. But it really comes down to the grief that, oh my God, this is not what we imagined. And we don't know how great we are at this. And like, was this a mistake? And are we doing a good job? And, oh, this poor baby. There's just so many directions, that it is going. And so it's very easy to snap at each other. It's very easy to lose sight of kind of what it is that's really bothering people, in those moments. And so we tried to really take time to get a babysitter once in a while, or a family member to come over so we could just go out to dinner or something like that. I know that's hard right now. I know this is a whole different ballgame with the pandemic, but really tried to make time for our relationship so that we could even just separate us from a crying baby for a little bit. And that is so beneficial. And that, I guess that is one of the bigger tips that I want to say is, when you are so exhausted and you feel like no matter what you do, you're not helping, because it's the inconsolable piece. But even if you feel like it's not helping, do it anyways, because it is, right? So even if, taking a break, going out for the night, you still feel bad about it, you feel guilty about this, and you are still going to get those benefits from it. And even if you don't feel like it's helping, if that makes sense, do it anyways.
Yeah.
Do it anyway.
That's how I feel about getting on my bike every now and then. I love to exercise, but there's days that I'm like, I don't want to do it, but just do it because I'll feel better. One more question I'm thinking about. So Colicky Baby, you're learning that it's not just you, like she's having some problems, you and your partner are trying to work it out. How do you rebuild? Like once she started to feel better, how did you rebuild and start to enjoy parenthood, and kind of put it behind you and be like, okay, we got past that. And like you said, there was maybe resentment or just confusion. And how did you get on the other side? How did you rebuild that?
I think some of it, I actually didn't start going to therapy until like 5 months into it. So like that was part of it that helped is, I started doing that because she started to get better around 7 months, 6, 7 months. So it was longer than the three to 4 that they had predicted. But, so I started going to therapy, which obviously anytime we're working on ourselves, it is going to help the partnership as well. And, there's not a lot of research on this, but dads are very affected when moms are affected and vice versa. Right. So, and partners of any sort, you are definitely affected when your partner is not doing well. So I think that helped. And I think just her naturally getting older at that point, she was less reliant on us and, started to nap. And so naturally some of those things, that perspective shift was like, oh, we can breathe a little bit now. And I think that perspective, I'm very grateful that it happened, because it then allowed us to really appreciate our second child even more, because we knew like how difficult it could be. We did not take anything for granted after that. Like it was, I don't know how it would have been if our second child was colicky and our first wasn't. I think that would have been a lot tougher, to be honest. But because she was, we were just able to enjoy that. And so, naturally, when she became more independent and was comfortable and, wasn't screaming after every time she ate, it just felt so good for us, because she was then having a much better time. Like she was enjoying life. So it was a lot easier for us to enjoy it.
That makes a lot of sense. All right, we're going to take one more break. When we come back, if you have one final tip or piece of advice for new and expectant parents, and it doesn't have to be about colic, you are a therapist, you are a parent. It can be anything that you want to offer, anything you want to bestow upon the community. We'll be right back.
Swimsuit? Check. Sunscreen? Check. Phone charger? Check. Don't forget to pack the 5-Hour Energy. It fits great in a pocket or carry-on, and the alert feeling will help you arrive ready for anything. Now get 20% off when you use code 5HETRAVEL at 5hourenergy.com. Expires April 30th. One-time use only. Not valid with other discounts. Remember, visit 5hourenergy.com and use code 5HETRAVEL to save 20%.
Okay, so from your knowledge as a professional, as a parent, what is one final tip or piece of advice you'd like to offer new or expectant parents?
Oh, do a lot of, reading and research and getting familiar with the concept of self-compassion. I think it is so essential to everybody, whether you're a parent or not. We have always grown up in a society of kind of tough love. I have to tough this out. I have to struggle for it to mean something. No, life is tough enough. Self-compassion. Let's help each other out, support each other, prioritize our health. Let's make it easier so that we can enjoy things a lot more, So self-compassion is one of those topics that I don't think it's definitely talked about a lot more, but is not talked about enough. And it's something that can really be life-changing, because it's the ability to say, hey, it's not always pretty, but I'm doing my best, and that's all I can do.
That is so great. I'm actually writing that down, the importance of self-compassion, because it's so true. Where can people find your work?
Well, it depends on what kind of work. So we have, my website is JacquelineDelVecchio.com. So that's just a little bit more about the psychotherapy services. And I also dabble a little bit in laughter therapy. So I do offer groups through that, or just, webinars, that sort of thing. And then just my Instagram is But Let's Be Realistic. And there I just kind of share tips here and there, it's all therapy related. And so either way that is where you could find me.
I'll make sure that we have all of that in our show notes. Thank you so much. I know it's not, a topic that everyone is going to fall into, but for those that are there or those preparing, wow, you really gave some amazing information that I think will help, will throw a lifeline to those that are in the middle of it, as well as help prepare people who may end up with a colicky baby. So thank you for all of your knowledge and your time.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
This has been an episode of Yoga Birth Babies, produced by Prenatal Yoga Center. You can catch us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Periscope. I'm Deb Flaschenberg. Thanks for listening.
Looks like you need a vacation. Enter the 5-Hour Energy Where Will the Tide Take You sweepstakes. You could win a $10,000 dream beach vacation. Imagine jet setting off to a tropical paradise, having fun in the sun, or diving at a gorgeous reef. It's up to you. No purchase necessary. Go to 5HETide.com for official rules and to enter. That's 5HETide.com. Enter today. Ends June 30th, 2024.